So the question was, what are the procedures when you go to different terminals? Do you break your set down? Do you leave it hooked? So let's talk about it. Now, I might have talked about this before, but if I haven't, let's talk about it anyway. So each terminal you go to, it's gonna vary. Now, some terminals you're gonna go to, you might go to massive terminals that have like maybe 200, 300 doors. You might go to a terminal that has maybe 10 to 15 doors. So if you go to like a small, let's talk about the small terminals. If you go to a small terminal, chances are it's not going to be a terminal that operates 24/7. Usually going to be a terminal where they load the trailers, they shut down, and then they have another crew that comes in the early morning to strip all the freight that the Linehaul guys bring in. Now, a terminal like that, most likely, it might be a terminal where you're like the only driver there, meaning you have to use a key or an entry code to get in, and then you basically got to lock it when you come in and lock it when you come out. Now, no matter what LTL company, you're going to have that. Whether you're at the company I'm at, if you go to like Old Dominion, Southeast, all the LTL companies, there's going to be a terminal that's like that. That's small, where you might be the only person in there. Now, usually smaller terminals, I know for us, typically they're going to want you to break the set down. Like, for instance, there's one in particular that I go to in Ocala. Usually the rule of thumb is, like, if I go there, the rule of thumb is you put your lead in the door, and then you just leave your tail out on the yard. Now, you might go to some terminals where they might want you to put them both in the door, or they might want you to just leave it hooked. Now, when you do this line haul, when you go to these different terminals, you got to understand what type of terminal is it. Is it like a hub? Is it like a, I call it like a relay terminal, basically a terminal where they'll just drop it off, they'll just leave it there, and then they'll have another driver come get it. I'll give you a perfect example. Our Ocala and Tallahassee terminal, perfect example. So a lot of times, let's use Tallahassee for instance. A lot of times they might have freight that comes from the west. They might have, teams bringing in there, and then they'll have, drivers from like Southern Florida come up and get it. So like drivers from Ocala, Tampa, Orlando, we might go up to like Tallahassee and get freight that comes in from maybe Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, and all those states. Another big terminal where they use a lot of freight to just drop off is our Atlanta terminal. Now, we have 3 terminals in Atlanta. We have a north, south, and west. Now, south, for instance, they use that one a lot for drop-off points. Basically out of that terminal, they have sets and vans, that go everywhere. You might have freight going to Chicago. You might have freight going to Charlotte, basically everywhere. So a lot of times they'll bring it there, and then they'll disperse it throughout, the southeast and the Midwest regions. Now, sometimes you might go to like big terminals, that have like 100, 200, 300 plus doors. Now, typically terminals like those are going to be your terminals that operate, 24/7 nonstop. So, like I said, some of our large terminals are South Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago. Those are some of our big ones. So those, you might have, Linehaul guys coming in and out all hours of the day and night. Now, terminals like that, a lot of times, they'll have maybe 2 or 3 hostlers, so they might have you just leave it in the yard, or again, rule of thumb, put the lead in the door, and then the hostler will put the tail in the door. Now, if you're not familiar, like I've said in other videos, if you're not familiar with a particular terminal, just park to the side, that way you're out of the way. Go in the office, ask them like, hey, I have freight from such and such, what do you want me to do with it? Or, you can ask the hostler. Now, usually the hostler, he's gonna know exactly where those trailers need to go. And again, if you go to like a mega hub, you might need to leave it hooked. Like, for instance, you might have, you might go to Atlanta, but you might have one trailer bound for Nashville, and then your other trailer could be bound for, let's just say, Louisville. So in an instance like that, you might need to leave it hooked. Now, depending on how much weight you have in that trailer, you know, let's just say you have a pup that's bound for Chicago and it's in Atlanta, but let's just say that pup is like maybe 9,000. Well, guess what? They might put that pup on the door and they might load some Atlanta freight to put into that Chicago pup. So that's another instance. But like I said, rule of thumb is lead in the door, tail the hostler do it unless, you know, they tell you otherwise. Like I said, some terminals you go to, they might have the sets hooked for you. You might go to some where you have to hook it yourself. Like me personally, I know the hostlers, you know, they have a lot to do, so I typically won't bother them. If I can do it myself, you know, I'll just hook it myself, you know, that way that's one less set that they have to do. And not only that, the truck I have the pencil hook, so I could just get a dolly and do it like that. That way I'm saving time, not having to wait. Because that hostler, you know, he could have on his computer screen, he might have 10 sets ahead of you. So, I mean, it takes time to hook up one set. So just imagine having 9 others in front of you. So I just do it myself. And it's also important to any terminal you go to, try to learn the layout, learn where the empties are kept, learn where the inbound freight is, learn where the outbound freight is. Now, typically, most terminals, you'll learn this, you know, as you go. Typically, they'll use the same door for the same area. So let's just say door 80 is Tampa. Well, every time I go to this particular terminal, I know doors 80 to maybe 84 is all the Tampa freight. Or let's just say I'm going to Miami and I'm at this particular terminal. I know door 105, you know, is for Miami. So those are just little things that you learn, because typically, you know, at the company I'm at, they typically use the same doors each night for that destination. So that makes it easier. So word of advice is learn the terminals. You know, if you're somebody that bounces from terminal to terminal, learn the layout, learn their rules, learn their policies. And yeah, hope that answers your question. Anybody else that's ever wondered what's the process when we go to different terminals. All right, y'all, so that's the video today. I will catch y'all in the next one. Y'all take it easy. Y'all stay safe.